Right. Okay, so just a reminder, this session, this first webinar is going to be recorded, and we can officially kick off with this meeting. So thank you a lot for being here, of course. And my name is Leonardo Santamaria, and I'm an activist for Eumans. I've been an activist for this pan-European movement for 8 months now. And of course, I'm deeply enthusiastic to start this series of webinars dedicated to educating European citizenship on topics that we are deeply attached to and that we think that every citizen in Europe, in the European Union, should be deeply attached to. So um, to kick off, I would like to leave the floor to Francesco Vecchi, who is we could say, the most prominent figure in the Eumans movement for this Civic AI initiative, and who is leading this initiative in all its forms. So I will leave the floor to Francesco, who will give you an overview of our initiative, and we'll talk about the webinars and the series of webinars and the upcoming webinars that we are going to hold. So, Francesco, the floor is to you.
Thank you very much, Leonardo, and you're too kind with your words, of course. Maybe not all of you know what Eumans is. Eumans is a pan-European movement by popular initiative that was founded by Marco Cappato in 2019. Marco is in fact joining the call. He is the president currently, one of the two co-presidents. And to be fair, the idea of the Civic AI campaign originated from him and from a series of other experts in the field back in 2023, 2024. What I've been doing in the last year is coordinating the campaign, so creating a pan-European movement, which has a very strong Italian base, but still started to gain momentum all over Europe with some activities in France, Spain, and some others even in Germany. And the idea behind the Civic AI campaign is the use of technologies, remarkably AI, to enhance rather than undermine democracy. Now we know that AI is used in many different contexts. It is used, for example, in warfare to select targets. We saw this, for example, in the war in Iran in a few days ago. It is used, obviously, with algorithms to glue us to the screens of our mobile phones and to motivate unnecessary purchases. It is used even just by the most normal applications that we are using on a daily basis, for instance, Google Maps and whatever, in the form of machine learning, but it can be used also in several other ways. So AI is already something which is deeply present in our daily lives, but oftentimes we're not even aware that AI is so present in our daily lives, and we don't even reflect on what impact this technology has, let alone what impact it has on our democracy. So this is exactly the reason why we decided to organize this series of webinars, and I would ask Stefano, please, to thank you very much. In the last few months, we realized that a lot of people, even though they are using technology every day, they are not exactly aware of what is going on in their mobile devices. And in order to speak about the democratic use of AI, we have definitely to start exposing them to why data is already something so crucial in our lives. Data is, of course, the backbone of any digital service. It is, first and foremost, the backbone of AI. And it is, as I like to call it, is the new way we are approaching knowledge. It's the new way we organize, we use, we adapt information to our needs, and we create services out of it. For this reason, we decided to start on the series of webinar with this very crucial topic. There will be others all over the next few months. We will have the chance to delve deeper into, for example, e-participation platforms. We will have the chance to discuss about digital identity and possibly also e-voting. We will have the chance to discuss about the digital divide and to delve deeper into the specific technology, which is AI. But now, today, I'm super happy that we will focus on data with some of the most interesting experts in the field. And here I leave the floor again to Leonardo, who will be the moderator for this session today. Leonardo was too humble in introducing himself. In fact, he is a philosopher on AI. He has done his master thesis on the subject, and he will hopefully get a PhD on that as well. And therefore, I'm super happy to leave in the floor to lead the session. I will be with the account of Eumans constantly interacting in the chat. I will share with you a few links to know more about the Civic AI campaign led by Eumans in these topics. But of course, today the focus will be on Leonardo, Marta, Anna, Sylvain, and so on and so forth. So Leonardo, please take the floor again and let me shut up.
Okay, thank you so much, Francesco. Okay, so who owns our data? How data becomes political power? So I think that Francesco already gave you a quite comprehensive view of the importance of this topic and how relevant it is for us, and especially for the Civic AI initiative within the Human movement. Now, I would go directly to the breakdown of today's session so that we can, or I can give you an overview of what we're going to do today and the kind of topics that we're going to discuss. And I will also give you just a very brief introduction to our speakers who will then be introduced more comprehensively later. So what we're going to do today is basically we're going to have an icebreaker curated by Antonio Alaya, who is CEO of NAMI Data Intelligence. So I will leave the floor very soon to him, and he will explain the mechanics of the icebreaker. After that, I'm going to introduce our guest speakers of tonight. They are Marta Poblet, Anna Colom, and Sylvain Le Bon. Anna Colom and Marta are from the Data Tank, whereas Sylvain Le Bon is from Starting Blox. They're going to give us two very different, although complementary perspectives on the topic of data governance and more generally the topics of tonight, who owns our data and what is the impact of data management, data governance on democratic practices. And after that, after Sylvain will have responded to our main speakers, we are going to open the debate to everybody. You will have the possibility of seeing the results of this little icebreaker activity that you're going to do in just a couple of minutes. And after that, we're going to have a wrap up of this session. So without further ado, I shall leave the floor to Antonio Alaya, who should be able to share his screen with us and explain to you the icebreaker activity that we're going to do.
Okay, good evening, everybody, and thank you for having me tonight, and thank you all for participating. Then, as Leonardo and Francesco said, we start with a little game. We are designing this icebreaker in order to gather some answers from you and then compare to the European answers of the same questions. The questions are chosen from the European Social Survey, so we will see the questions they made. So, how this icebreaker works? I'll share the link in the chat, and in order to participate from the same personal computer or whatever, but now I'll share the screen so you can participate with the QR code. Just a second. Okay. I think the QR code is visible, so I'll wait for people to participate. If you have, of course, any problems, you can write in the chat, and I'll be happy to solve it.
Yes, Antonio, I fear that the QR code redirects to another QR code. I don't know if that is right or not. Am I the only one having this issue, or?
I don't see the other one, so I think it's something you see, but it's the same.
Okay.
It should be the same.
Yes, it's the same QR code, isn't it?
Yes,
Okay, Andrea has the same.
I don't see it, but I think it's the same.
No, apparently also Andrea Guidotti is having the same issue, but maybe it's just a question of access.
If there are any problem with the QR code, you can use the link. It works.
But
anyway.
the link also redirects to a QR code.
Oh no, okay. If you see the QR code on the phone, it's good since it's the slide. If it works, you should see the logo.
Now we can see it very well. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll wait just a few seconds, but I think everybody's in. Just wait to be sure. I can see your pushing interactions. I can see on screen, so I think it's so far so good. So now let's go to the European Social Survey questions. It's a survey that are collected through European states in the 2025. So I found, of course, the latest collection, and as you will see, in every tournament they decided what country to be included. So we won't see all the whole Europe. So we won't see the every country from Europe, but we had a very big sample to to discover, to explore. So without further ado, let's go to the first question. I swear this is the most complex one. The other ones will be easier. It will be shorter. So don't be scared. It's just the first one. Of course, I have to remind you this is for there are opinion, so there's not a right answer. It's just opinion, and it's to test the sentiment on the trust and the willingness to share data with public agency or private company or public agency of sorts. So it's just opinions, so you don't have to think about the right answer, just what you think. And of course, I left the option of no answer if someone don't want to answer, of course. I can see 18 out of 33. I'm still waiting. Okay, I don't know if there are any problems, but I see 19 people out of 33 answered. I'll wait, but if there are any problem with the interactive form, please let me know. Of course, if there are some questions in the chat, I'll ask Leonardo, please, to share it with me, because I can't see the screen right now. So if there are any problems, just tell me. Okay. Then next question. Now we are talking about the most trusted entity to protect your personal data. So we have, of course, the myself option. We have the online companies I share data with that I remember are all the platform that we actively use every day for work, for leisure. So any kind of company we have joined with a login, we share information. We also, when we don't actively entry the data, they still share and they still owns our personal data. Of course, national public authorities for the for bureaucracy and agraphy and everything, and of course European Union. I'll wait a few seconds, but I can see that questions are almost, answers are almost done.
Yes, as Piero was saying in the chat, there are in fact 19 attendants, let's say, out of the organizer. So whenever we reach 19, 20, I think we can.
Okay, perfect. So now who should be mostly responsible for protecting personal data? So now it's not about who you trust, but it's about accountability and it's about responsibility of for protecting, not owning personal data. So we have a similar. The ESS decided to use a similar answer, similar choice as myself, but internet users themselves. Then we have once again online companies I share data with, national public authorities, and the European Union. I see we are almost done. Just two left.
I think we can proceed, Antonio.
Yes. Okay. Next, we have the willingness to share social media data with a local private company, with, of course, without compensation to improve their services. So it's the the most common thing is the feedback that the social media the private company asks for us, and through feedback, so through data entry, but mostly you can share social media via the login itself. So it's something that we think it's uncommon, but it's a thing that we do a lot. But the question here is, are you willing to share social media data with local private company? Of course, without compensation. Okay, I see. I think we can. Okay, we are all now the same willingness to share social media data, this time with local public administration. So if someone were to ask you to share data of your personal social media, would you give them? Would you give to local public administration without compensation to improve their services? Of course, it's just a yes or no. I can see the last one. Okay. Now, the last two questions. The willingness to share now browser history data with local private company. Usually, it's something we already do most of the times. When we leave the cookies, when we leave the little traces ourselves in the websites that they use to improve their services, and we do for free. So if you were to ask to share the browser data, what would you respond? Okay, 16. So just okay. And the last question, of course, same instrument as the last one, but now local public administration, exactly as we do with the social media data. Okay, I think 17. Okay, I think, okay, 18. So thank you. And of course, we'll see later with the response. Thank you.
Okay, thank you a lot, Antonio, for this icebreaker activity. I asked Stefano to share again our presentation. Fantastic. So now we're going to have a panel of speakers. And hopefully after these discussion and presentations that our guest speakers will give, maybe you will change or will develop the willingness to change some of the responses that you gave to this icebreaker activity. We will see. So we're going to have, as I said earlier, two different perspectives on the topic of data governance. So the first two speakers are going to be Anna Colom and Marta Poblet. Hopefully I did not mispronounce their names. They will speak to us in the capacity as researchers at the Data Tank, which is a non-profit think and do tank based in Brussels that basically works with governments, civil society, and even the private sector to unlock the potential of data, as well as to ensure that data is used in a responsible and purposeful way. So starting from Anna Colom is the senior policy lead at the Data Tank, and she's a political and social scientist that focuses on democratic processes, data, AI, climate, and public health. Previously, she was the public participation research lead at the Ada Lovelace Institute. And even before that, she was director of innovations and learning at Africa's Voices Foundation. Anna Colom holds a PhD from the Open University, which she earned in 2024 in developmental studies. Marta Poblet, on the other hand, is senior research lead, so not policy lead, this time research lead at the Data Tank, as well as adjunct professor at RMIT University. Before, she co-founded the Institute of Law and Technology at the Autonomous University of Barcelona, and she holds a JSD from Stanford University. Throughout her academic career, Marta Poblet authored over 80 scientific articles and book chapters at the intersection of law, political science, technology, with special focus on data, AI, distributed technologies, human-computer interaction, and theories of democracy and citizenship. Now, without further ado, I shall leave the floor to Anna Colom and Marta Poblet and ask them to share the presentation from their devices. After they will give their talk, we'll have Sylvain Lebon, who I will present separately later, and then we will kick off with the Q&A session. So the floor is to you, Anna and Marta.
Yeah, thank you very much, Antonio, Francesco, Leonardo, Eumans team. for having us in this first webinar. We are very happy to be here, and it's an honor to be starting this seminar series. I'm going to start, and Anna and I will jump. We're giving the floor to each other throughout the presentation, if that's okay. Can everyone see Anna's slides on the screen?
I think the slides are coming, but probably there's just some connection.
I have a small window that says your screen sharing is paused. So maybe let me stop sharing again and try again.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And
still not.
It says that you started screen sharing, and double click.
Could it be that no, because there's no other share. That's strange. Okay, let me try.
I can try as well, maybe, Anna. Or try again if you. Yep.
Now we see.
Yep.
There we go.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we see the presentation. Yeah.
Great.
So the title is we've taken the title of the session, Who Owns the Data? The Role of Civic Data in Rebuilding Democracy and Challenging Big Tech Dominance. And a bit the structure of our talk is the one as you can see on the screen, a very brief presentation of ourselves since the presenters have already done so beautifully, and then we'll go straight into the three topics or two topics that we want to focus on: the power asymmetries in tech and governance, data silos and data harms in relation with democratic and commons-based approach to data and AI development and governance. And we'll be using examples mostly coming from our project that it's ongoing at the moment, which is titled Strengthening Media in the Age of AI, because we think that media contents, data and information from media, it's one of the pillars of democracy in Europe. So we think that this example is going to be very relevant. So I think Francesco or Leonardo mentioned us at the start. We are a Brussels-based think and do tank. We are only 3 years old, so this month is actually our third birthday. We can consider ourselves kind of a toddler in the data ecosystem space. And our vision is broadly a future where societies are equipped to access, share, and reuse data in inclusive, responsible, systematic, and sustainable ways. The way we do that is basically through four pillars. One is data stewardship, so the human aspect of data management, the link between the regulatory infrastructures and the practical developments of data governance, social license or participatory processes around how data should be reused and governed, AI and emerging technologies, because I think Francesco mentioned that data has been the bedrock of AI and AI governance, and also business models for data collaboratives and data governance models. So our team is very small, and we are distributed across different European cities. I'm currently based in Valencia. If you hear, by the way, background music, it's because we are in Falla season, and that's a very festive moment. But I hope that I'm screening this out with the headphones. And Anna is also based in another European city, as well as the people that you have here on the screen. Our team based in different European cities, small but multidisciplinary. And since we started with the question, who owns the data, we think that it's also interesting to connect to this very question another that it's very relevant, that it's equally relevant, we would say, which is who has access to the data. Sometimes we may get entangled a bit in the ownership discussion, when equally important is whether we have access to that data, whether we own that data or not. And we want to illustrate this with two very recent local examples from last week. in Catalonia. So and that involves open data from public institutions, right? So we're talking, for example, the first example is called Dignitat a les Vies, or Dignity on the Tracks. It is a website, a citizen-based website built by citizens, trying to share information, publicly available information, on the speed limits of trains in Catalonia. There's been a mobility crisis, so to speak, in the last few weeks in Catalonia, where our train system has been failing for different reasons, and leaving people stranded in stations or with very huge delays, disturbing people's mobility in general. So this group of citizens took the initiative to build in an afternoon, as they said, a website that with an API connected to this publicly available data by Renfe and Adif, the public companies managing the railway systems in Catalonia and broadly in Spain. What happened is that when these two companies saw the people using their public data to give very granular information on the speed limits of trains in different areas, that people could calculate how long it would take to get home or to get to work, the website was shut down by a court order. Well, the companies enforced the shutting down of the website, alleging that the speed train limits were too sensitive information to be shared with citizens in a website. The second example, it's called subsidies in Catalonia. It's a bit of the same story. It's by one citizen that, again, using spare time aside from daily job, set up a website tapping on publicly available data by the Catalan administration on who has been subsiding what public entities have been subsiding what other entities in the public or private space. And again, same thing happened 24 hours later. The stream of data that that person was tapping on gets shut down, not the website, but the data streams. So the web has no longer access to public data. I think these two examples are quite illustrative of the access problem, that it's equally important to the ownership of data problem. And that affects not only private companies, we have examples obviously from big tech, but it's not circumscribed to private entities either. So I want to raise this question first, and then I'm giving the floor to Anna for the next slides.
Great, thank you so much, Marta. So yeah, with these case studies, we'll now move on to our strategy as a nonprofit organization in terms of our theory of change in relation to data governance. And in this strategy, which you can see in our website, we started with discussing and identifying the challenges we see in the world. There's a few, but we'll focus only mainly on one, because it's linked to the others as well, which is power asymmetries. So at the moment, what we can see is huge power asymmetries currently concentrated in big tech as well as powerful governance. And this has big implications for who's holding most of the data right now, what is it being used for, and who's deciding what's being used for. Also, of course, who is represented in this data, what regions, what languages, what views and opinions. So that power concentration, we think, is a very defining moment of our times and very problematic as well. We'll talk soon about our case study, which is about media and a project we're running with the media ecosystem in Europe. But this visualization, it's quite illustrative of the concentration of data, media data in this case, public interest, journalism content, in the hands of the big tech companies, just a handful of companies. You can see these arrows point to the different media organizations who have had, the ones who could, because the smaller ones cannot do that at the moment, who've had to strike some deals to at least get some sort of compensation from these huge tech companies that are extracting their data. That's related to another problem, which is the narrative asymmetry. That means what stories do we hear about what's possible, what data do we have, what can be done with this data. It's the narratives, which also have to do with the images that we see about that. Do we see often very robotic type of illustrations rather than real case, tangible realities about what data is and how it's used and the consequences of how it's used. So yeah, this narrative, the promises that are being pushed have huge impact also on whose voices counts, how do we think data can be used, what can we imagine as, good uses of data. So based on that, there's a few changes we want to see. And that's, again, in our theory of changing our strategy. Don't worry about the text, that I won't read that, but just in terms of the headlines in blue. So we want to see policies and services that are driven by evidence and by knowledge. And that's where data can be helpful if responsibly used. It's essential, actually, if responsibly used. We also want to see AI and emerging technologies using this data responsibly, not only policies by the public sector. And in any case, we want to see decision-making processes that are democratic and that meaningfully include different publics, because that's ultimately where the data comes from in large part. And that entails also building resilient infrastructure, both in terms of human skills, but also in terms of standards, processes, ecosystems. It requires collaboration. And we will talk about this a lot later on in terms of, data collaboratives, data ecosystems, and how they are governed. And it also requires for people, all of us, to really understand data and value it and, really have quite in-depth knowledge on how it's being used, how we think it should be used, what ways are there to use it better. But yeah, in practice, really, this means working towards very tangible outcomes. It can sound very abstract sometimes, data, especially when we see these images of robots and stuff. Actually, it means working towards very hands-on, very important aspects of our lives, whether it's media, which we'll talk about today, and democracy, therefore, whether it's about environmental protection and climate mitigation, healthcare, civic agency, rights and justice, whether it's about a competitive economy, etc. So I'll hand over back to you, Marta.
Thanks, Anna. So as Anna said, one of our tasks as an organization is to provide, also to contribute to the European policy debate on data and digital strategy. And this is just a summary of the recommendations for EU's data and digital strategy we provided last year. I'm not going to read in detail, but it's about articulating open innovation policies that capture the purpose and avoid monopolistic capture, prioritizing high impact and tangible purposes, such as the ones Anna has mentioned in the previous slide, building the missing human infrastructure. By that, we mean also data stewardship, the skills and competences for citizens, for people in general, to be able to manage and govern their data, and update in that process data governance beyond consent, because consent is the legal basis, obviously, for data use and data reuse. But is that enough in a democratic process where we need also the legitimacy of knowing how our data is used and reused? And all of this trying to adopt what we call a polycentric and participatory type of governance, which is basically decentralized, that it's common-based, and it's bottom-up. And ultimately, it points to two facts. One is reclaiming our agency in how data is used and governed. And second, in the way we build collaborative ecosystems for that management. So two examples of those recommendations. Maybe we've written, again, in our, if you check our Medium and our websites, you'll see those publications. By going beyond digital sovereignty, we mean that it could be insufficient to replace American-led tech companies' supremacy by digitally built in Europe technological sovereignty, right? So simply a replacement of that may fall short of capturing the need for bottom-up, decentralized, polycentric. Europe is a very rich diversity of nations. So capturing these polycentric features in Europe is part of what we call this polycentric approach. And again, another example, not delving much into it, but if you remember, there were huge flooding events in Valencia a couple of years ago, and there was this discussion whether all these human lives could have been saved or not based on the technology available. And in one conclusion here in what we wrote is that it was not because of the lack of data. Again, there were multiple streams of public data, even broadcasted on the internet every 10 minutes, that were completing a picture of what was going on. But the lack of the skills of the management of transforming that huge amount of data streams into quick, effective, and cost-saving decision making, that missing link, that's something we need to work on. Because again, even if we talk about emergencies, it's a huge component of how a citizenship, such as the European one, can make their democratic systems more resilient by making them as well more resilient to emergencies and disasters. So that's the two examples. But so yeah, we conclude that building those type of sustainable data and knowledge commons ecosystems is what we can think of offering the most agile, flexible, participatory, and open processes for those data and knowledge sharing and collaboration. So maybe we can give it back to Anna so that she can illustrate that with our current project with media organizations.
Great. So yeah, so at the moment we're working on a very interesting process with the media ecosystem in Europe, because what's happening, as we saw in an earlier slide on the media capture, is that currently the data, the media content from media organizations, whether they are big or small, it's being extracted without any consent or respect on any licenses by big generative AI models. And this has implications. And then what's happening is that audiences more and more are going to these AI assistants as well, rather than going to the media outlets where the data originally comes from. So this is having huge implications for public interest media and therefore for our democracies, because once we read this content in the AI assistants, it loses attribution, it loses integrity, and then there's no revenue going back to the journalists who are doing the work. So there's a huge crisis now globally in terms of media. You can see, for example, this quote from the literature review that we've been doing. Exner says, "The game has taken yet another turn. This time it seems that automated AI systems could make journalistic media as providers of research and contextualization basically disappear." So the sector is really concerned. We are convening a process to try and find solutions. So yeah, we are bringing together many organizations from many countries, try and mobilize power, try and share knowledge between themselves on what can be done. And ultimately, we want to agree collectively on a roadmap of actions on what the media sector can do. These are the activities that we've been doing, mapping the key stakeholders, doing a literature review. And this Thursday, we are starting the dialogue process with the first session. And we'll then, of course, disseminate what's been agreed and what we found as well in the research. That's the flyer. Some of you may have seen it on LinkedIn for the events.
Yes, I'll take the floor again. So very briefly, what we're finding on the literature is, okay, this is a diagnosis. It's a dire diagnosis because there's this process of extracting data, extracting content with no contribution back to whoever produces that content. what's the next steps? And we're finding that collaborative ecosystems, governance and business models for collective management of media content, journalism, are very prominent, as well as the proposals for coalitions and bridges and collective action based on outcomes and trust. So the voice in the literature, the prominent voice in the literature is proposing to build and regulate public interest media and digital public infrastructure, and ultimately construct and fund new imaginaries, because generative the AI is here to stay. So can we imagine how this will configure the next generation of media ecosystems? So maybe a short recap, because I'm conscious about time. So everybody here is in the same page, and maybe this is not needed, but we're trying to do these parallels between the classical typology of goods, as Elinor Ostrom made a few years ago, that also applies to data, and we think that also applies to media contents. So you have here this very famous table of and we can think, for example, of data or goods as either public and private. That's a very intuitive distinction, right? Public goods, lighthouses, radio, street light, the BBC that we can tune in, or the opposite, private goods. Goods that are excludable. If we buy a printed newspaper, that's happening less and less. We're excluding other people from this good, and at the same time, the fact that I buy a printed newspaper also excludes others from buying it. And then you have also two types of additional goods, data or media contents. On the one hand, club goods, imagine the New York Times that you need to subscribe to, easily excludable to non-members. Or you have non-excludable common goods, and perhaps the most paradigmatic example is the Wikipedia, right? So all of this to say that reflecting on data as an economic asset and situating it in that quadrant, very famous quadrant, what we find as well with our study on media organizations and their challenges with generative AI is that generative AI is actually extracting data from all the types here in the quadrant, not just the common goods that are mostly non-excludable, of course, or the public ones, but also private and club goods are being extracted by generative AI. And that's a challenge that we didn't have prior to that. And that leads to this conversation on that we're finding in the literature on data commons and data collaboratives. So I think the next two slides are simply quotes that we're finding that are exemplifying from the literature the need for thinking, imagining common-based governance systems that collectively govern this data and their relationships. This is valid for media organizations as well as for data that we maybe don't own, but we can access or not access. And in line with that, we've seen that the commons approach that should help us to rethink collective ownership and governance is also very prominent in our findings. And these are quotes that maybe exemplify that. So maybe Anna, over to you for the last couple of examples.
Yes, exactly. And as Marta, you were saying, Wikipedia is perhaps a very clear example of a data commons. What it means is that, yes, it's open, everyone can access it, but actually it's a lot of work of editorializing, internal accountability of the content that goes there. It's human driven, it's a collaborative process of decision making. So this links as well to what we were saying about how the commons should be governed, and the aspect of participation, democracy, accountability. Another type of commons are the European data spaces. There's, I think, 12 or 14, I can't remember now exactly, but that the EU is developing with many stakeholders in Europe, public, private, civil society. There's the health data space, which is the first that has been developed, but there's also the media data space, the trusted European media data space, which are taking part in our workshops as well. So it'll be interesting as well to see how this develops. The idea is that media organizations have space to pool resources, to develop innovative ways of, sustaining their business models, as well as sharing content and protecting the public interest value that it has.
Yes, and to start concluding, we've written quite extensively already on those topics, and this paper by Anna and I last year applies this polytopic approach. By polytopic, we mean multidimensional, right? So governing the commons implies decisions at the micro, meso, and macro levels, because of the design principles that structure the commons themselves. So this is an example of health data reuse in the European Union, and how a commons-based approach could enhance the democratization of those decision-making processes. And we don't have a Mentimeter for those final questions, as Antonio nicely put it, but we think it can add to the questions that were considered in the icebreaker at the start of the session, and that guiding questions for us as well. So what types of data matter to you that could help you and your community live better? That's a question we raise in our sessions. How is this data currently being used? And who makes decisions about it? Because that's what determines the governance of this data. So I think we can leave it here, and thanking you again so much for having us. And these are QR codes to our policy brief, to our strategy, and to our newsletter. If anyone in the room feels like subscribing, it would be a club good in that case. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you a lot, Anna and Marta. That was a fascinating talk, truly fascinating. So we talked about data concentration, monopoly, and of course, power narrative asymmetries. We saw also that sometimes these problems, or the problems on how data is exploited or not exploited, depend, or might depend as well, on the lack of skills, the lack of competences among the actors of society, of citizens as well in some cases. And we've seen the perspective of data governance, so of a think and do tank, sorry, that works explicitly on diagnosing the problems of how data is managed, and to conceptualizing, envisioning futures in which these problems do not materialize anymore. But obviously, we need other perspectives as well. We need to learn exactly what can be done from the grassroots, so to speak, right? So from bottom-up approach, what if data governance lags behind? What can individual participants or actors of the private sector do? And we're going to explore now this complementary perspective on data management, data governance, and what can individuals do with data? How can they can exploit data? What good initiatives or virtuous initiatives can be constructed for data management? With Sylvain Lebon, our next speaker, who in fact is currently working at TEMS, which is the Trusted European Media Data Space, which has been just cited by Marta and Anna. So Sylvain is working as an architect and use case strategist of TEMS, which, just to recap, is a data space that basically aims to redefine the way in which the media sector shares and accepts value from data. So we've seen with Marta and Anna that the media sector is fraught with power asymmetries. Data is concentrated in the hands of very few actors, and this is extremely problematic. And the situation is exacerbated with generative AI, which basically holds the potential of basically annihilating the power of individual journalists, of individual researchers, and people that contribute to the media industry. This is obviously an enormous problem. Now we're going to learn what we can do about it, with what kinds of initiatives can be enacted in order to counter these problems. And so Sylvain is going to talk to us about all of this. And as I already told you, he's an architect and use case strategist of TEMS, but he's also a co-founder of Startin Blox, which is a French tech company that builds interoperable dataspaces allowing organizations to share and exchange data without depending on big tech companies. And he's talking to us from a perspective from more than 20 years of experience in this field. So I thank again all our guests, and I'm enthusiastic to welcome and to leave the stage to Sylvain Le Bon. And obviously, for all the audience, if you have any questions, please feel free to write them in the chat, and we will be able to kick off with the Q&A session with those questions. Okay, so Sylvain, the floor is yours.
Thanks a lot, Leonardo, and yeah, thanks Eumans for organizing this series of webinar. Can you see my screen? Yes. Yes, cool. Yeah, so as Leonardo very well explained, I'm the co-founder of Startin Blox, and I work on data spaces. And TEMS is one very good example of big data spaces currently. And I'm going to talk to you about data sovereignty in somehow to try to answer the question who owns our data, and try to show how it not only applies to our personal data, but also in this case, democratic data as well. So when we talk about digital sovereignty, actually, it can sound like a very geopolitical abstract concept, but if we look at an individual level, data sovereignty can be very concrete. There's been quite a few scandals recently about how some journalists were able to access personal data by buying data from data brokers. So you might not know it, but you have probably a cell phone, and on this cell phone you probably have quite a few apps, and these apps share a lot of data about you. So they're not linked to your name or to your email address, but they're linked to a technical identifier that's on your phone. And this can sound like not personal because of that, but actually with this data is gathered together by all the brokers that buy the data from all the apps. And these journalists have been able to show that they've been able to gather data from individuals and see all their movements tracked by their phone from morning to evening, so they could see where they lived, where they worked, they could see what kind of apps they're using, what website they're visiting, and the amount of data they've been able to grab from these data brokers is actually very very scary, I think. And so when we talk about data sovereignty and digital sovereignty, that's one big part of it. Like there's data about you out there. And so if I ask you, you know where your personal data is? And the answer is actually today, it is everywhere. It is everywhere, and it is very easy to access. But there's all other aspects to digital sovereignty. And Donald Trump recently gave us a few examples with some sanctions he has taken against European citizens by forbidding them to access American services. And so that means that those individuals were not able to access their emails, they were not able to access their pictures online, they were not able to access their documents, and I mean, you could say it's more financial sovereignty than data sovereignty, but they were not able to use their credit cards either. And so today it's only a few individuals that are very highly involved politically, but it is possible that, you know, tomorrow Donald Trump decides, because of, I don't know, tensions, geopolitical tensions, that American services should not be able to sell the services to European citizens. And so that means that all the things you do online on your apps would not be accessible anymore. And if you look at what you're doing online, it's actually a lot. And same thing, it can be very concrete when we talk about digital sovereignty. But that's at an individual level. And the same thing happens to companies. If you apply the same thing to companies, then it can be very scary, because all the companies use American system. We're currently talking to each other through Zoom, which is an American company, and so same thing. We are dependent on these systems, and that's in order to fix this issue, that the European Commission has been pushing this data initiative with all the data spaces, among which TEMS that was mentioned is one of them. So in a very short nutshell, a data space is an ecosystem of organizations or applications, if you want, that are able to share data with each other without relying on a central platform. So right now we're talking to each other through Zoom, so that's a platform, which means we all have to use Zoom to talk to each other, and that's a very good example. But actually, most our digital usage today is going through a platform, and so we always dependent on a platform, which often is either American or sometimes Chinese, to do all the digital activities that we have. On a data space, on the other hand, we can, as individuals, we can decide what apps we use, and we don't have to use the same apps in order to talk to each other. So different apps are able to communicate to each other. So I would be able to use another app than Zoom to talk to you, and everyone in this room would be able to use the app they decided, because all these apps would be able to exchange the data with each other. And all of that is organized with a shared governance, which means it's not one actor that control everything, but it's a governance that's shared between the participants, with interoperability, meaning that you're able to use the app you want in a plug and play manner. So you can come with your own app and plug it into the data space, and with a very strong focus on sovereignty, meaning that you keep control of your data. With the question that was asked on who owns the data, well, then the answer is, if it's your data, it's under your control, and so you decide who can access that data. How does it have impact on me as an individual? Very quickly, two examples. In a health data space, you can imagine that you as an individual, you have a lot of data that's today in the hands of practitioners, and these practitioners have to share data with each other, and sometimes insurances have also had to access this data. In a health data space, the idea is that this data is all under your control, and you are the one who decides to share this data with a doctor, with a nurse, with an insurance company, and you know who can access your data. And so it reverses the control of data from what it is today into the hands of citizens. In the agriculture sector, the idea is that you can have more information about where the product that you're buying is coming from, because the data of the producer, the data of the distributor, and all the data of all the chain that led to the product becomes available, and so you can see what ingredients are in the product you eat, where it comes from, how it was produced, what carbon it emitted, and so on and so forth. When it comes to democracy, what we can see today in the digital world is that digitalization has created a lot of fragmentation. We probably could hope that the web would bring a lot of getting together, and that's not exactly what happened in the last years. There's a lot of noise out there. Everybody demands to be heard. No one listens to anyone. We have algorithms that we use on all the platforms that we use, and these algorithms are designed to create division. They are designed to create attention, and for this attention, they create division. And we have had the illusion that digital tools could create direct democracy, where we could have every single citizen giving their opinion all the time. But what we can learn from the recent years that probably we knew if we had studied political science, but is that the democracy cannot work if there is only the rulers and an unorganized mass of citizens who try to be heard at the same time. We need organization between all this. And the current state of digital democracy is that we have so many interesting tools out there to organize discussions, to organize petitions, to organize consultations, and so on. And then we have the social media where we actually debate. And so there's a lot of data, there's a lot of tools, but all of this is not connected to each other. A democracy data space would be a space where we could put together all this data. We could have all the debates, the deliberation, all the assemblies that are made, all the consultations. You would have social media where people talk, where people give their opinions, where people debate. You would have all the reports, the proposals, and all the content that's out there that's made by the civil society, by lobbyists, by all the actors who participate in the decision making, and all the open data that brings information that's necessary to take good decisions. And if we put all this data together with the right tools, then we end up in a system where, as a citizen, I can have access to all the information I need to be informed about decisions. And as a policy maker, I can be connected to all the data and participate in the right decision making. Very shortly, we've been working on this democracy data space for a year now. We've built, so there was a first proof of concept, first prototype that was built with the metropolis of Bordeaux, the city in France. Basically, their need is that the metropolis of Bordeaux is made out of, I think, 28 cities, and all of these cities had their own consultation platforms. So for the metropolis, it was not possible to add another platform on top of it, where the citizens would be completely lost between all the layers. And so their need was to be able to push a consultation to the cities that were concerned by a certain subject, and be able to have citizens see all the consultations that were concerned for them. So the idea is to have consultation flowing more freely between the platforms. So that was the very simple first use case we've been working on, and we've built on top of that this prototype that you're seeing like very briefly in the screen. That's a tool that enables a citizen to actually see all the consultations that are out there that are on a subject that's of interest for the citizen in a certain region, and so that the people can see what's going on, what people are saying, with some AI-generated summaries to give you ideas of what people actually think, yeah, so that you can contribute to those consultations. So yeah, that was the first step of the project, and we still have other use case coming up, and but that's the early stage of this democracy data space. on which we've been working. And yeah, that's it for me. So I'm very happy to discuss all of that if you have any questions.
Okay, thank you a lot, Sylvain. It was again a truly inspiring talk, especially this last part in which we can truly see firsthand the kinds of things that can be done in order to use technology and data to empower democracy instead of thwarting it, which deeply aligns with Eumans' commitment and the commitment of the Civic AI initiative within our movement. Okay, so we've now learned from very two different perspectives, but complementary perspectives again, what is being done, what is being thought, what is being studied, and what is being proposed to better manage our data. And unfortunately, as we are running a bit late on time, I would like to obviously invite you to write all the questions that you might have on the chat. In the meantime, I will give the floor to Antonio Laya again, so we can finally see the results of the icebreaker activity that you completed at the beginning of our webinar, and maybe some of the answers that you gave at the beginning of tonight's event might be revisited based on what we learned with our guest speakers tonight. So again, feel free to drop any questions you might have on the chat box. And in the meantime, Antonio, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. As before, for any interruption, any questions, please, Leonardo, tell me if there are any questions. So I'll stop the visualization and we'll talk about that. Anyway, let's see the answer very quickly, and let's see how your answers performed against the European Social Survey answers. This is not scientific, since it's a little game. It's a little game of sentiment, of comparing sentiments, since the sample today is very biased. We all are here because we trust European Union, and we have a very particular opinion, strong opinion about this kind of issues. But it's important, in order to know what's the world around us, to know what is the sentiment of a very different sample from us. So very quickly, I'll show. Okay, I think you can all see now. You don't need QR code, you don't need everything, you just have to see how you perform and the answer. So let's quickly go to the first question. As we can see, how likely or unlikely the public agency would use the data for the very purpose of which it was collected. We can see, surprisingly, you have a very optimistic idea of this simulation, since the answers are all above. The majority of the answers are above the medium point. So it's a very positive outlook, what you were sharing tonight with us. We can say the same of other European countries, since we can see, of course, how to read this plot. It's easily, the redder and the darker it gets, the most optimistic is. So as we can see, for Finland, Sweden, and Iceland, we have a lot of red, orange, brownish answers. So they really believe that the purpose is respected. So they really believe that the public agency in their country use the data for the very purpose they collected. But apart from Finland, Sweden, Iceland, and Austria, we can see it slowly getting worse. throughout the plot. And Italy here is maybe the worst, seeing that it's the country that gave more zero answers, as we can see. Then must trusted to protect your personal data. Of course, there's a big choice on myself, but once again, as I said earlier, as I said at the start, we have a very strong opinion on the European Union and the trust in this institution. So, of course, we have a majority of answers of that kind, but if we can compare it to other countries, we see that the myself choice is most important not most, all the times. The myself choice is the majority of the answer around Europe. So we filtered this answer. Let's just see how it's distributed on the other answers. We can see that apart from national public authorities that usually are same, the quantity is the same for each country, but the very the very difference is on the battle online companies versus European Union. As we can see, there is a very huge trust in the online companies we share data with. And for example, in United Kingdom, of course, for very clear reason, but for Poland, for Czechia, for Finland, for Hungary, the trust on the European Union is really, really low. And it's ridiculously low compared to the online companies they share data with and the national public authorities. Then now it's not about trust, but it's about who should be responsible. Once again, the majority is on the European Union, but we can see that it's more spread on the other answers. Once again, for the European countries, we have a total different kind of sentiment. The European Union choice is very, very unpopular still today. The internet user themselves is usually the one who is battling against the online companies' choice. And national public authorities this time is lower than the previous question, as we can see. But then again, only Belgium, France, and Austria, and maybe Portugal have a slight hope on the responsibility towards European Union. Then we
Anthony,
have
can we wrap this up in a couple of minutes so that we can go to the Q&As? We are
yes,
really short on time. Yeah, thank you.
yes.
Thank you.
Well, so very quickly, for willingness to share social media, we have, of course, the majority of no, and it's really reflecting on the European answers. Now, the social media data with public administration, it's a little battling, but it's a total no for the most of the answers on the European Social Survey. Same as the share browser history data. It's a huge no for you. It's a very bigger, huge no for them. And the same with local public administration. Now, here seems balanced, but overall, it's a total no. So that's the opinion on the European Social Survey. And thank you for your attention.
Okay. Probably as expected, followers of Eumans tend to have a more optimistic view of the European Union than other people or the average people out in society. Thank you a lot, Antonio, for this very interesting delve into the European Union data. So unfortunately, we are really running short on time, and we are just going to collect a couple of questions that I will read from the chat to our speakers, and I will ask the speakers to respond very, very briefly. So Romina Esposito asks, well, first of all, thanks the speakers for their constructive overview, and says, it seems to me that people, especially elderly people, are not aware of the importance of their data. How is it possible to increase their sensitivity to this topic? How can we increase awareness of this problematic aspect? And probably we can expand on this and ask, how can we generally increase awareness about this, not only in as elderly people, but probably the broader society? And maybe we can also ask, do you feel that there is a clear imbalance between the problematic nature of data governance and the public awareness of how data is managed? And now Emanuele Palomba is asking, oh no, unfortunately, he has to go. So I think we're going to stop there, and I'll just ask our speakers to briefly comment on the question from Romina. If maybe Marta and Anna, you want to start? Yeah.
Yeah, I can quickly start and say that we've worked with youth, young people on data literacy, and that's a topic that when people becomes aware of the importance are very engaged and participate. I don't see much difference with elderly people, maybe apart from the fact that they are most vulnerable to data breaches, scams, fraud, and I know that that's approaching from the negative point of view, but they become very aware of the importance of protecting their data when things go wrong, basically, but also when things go right, when people are aware that their medical health records, for example, can be anonymously aggregated for finding better cures for cancer, then people also becomes very aware of the importance of their data. So I think it boils down to data literacy ultimately.
Yeah, maybe if I can add, I think it's a really important question. It's the type of reality checks that we always need to ask ourselves when we talk about how to govern data, who is involved, how much do they understand that, if we talk about consent, is it really a valid consent? And that relates to the digital divide. So there's already many difficulties, for example, with the digitization of bank accounts for elderly people. So I think we need public services that are part of the ongoing literacy process, but also support processes for important decisions, important data. So we really need to build infrastructure if we want really decisions to be democratic and consent to be meaningful and people to really understand. We really need to build the infrastructure around it in terms of democratic infrastructure and public institutions. Yeah, thank you. I'll stop here because of the time.
Leo, you're muted, unfortunately.
Okay.
No worries.
I was thanking Anna and Marta for their very kind answer. We have just another question that maybe Sylvain would like to address. The question comes from Barbara Crepaldi, and Barbara asks, from what I heard from the speakers and read from articles, I got the idea that divisions and polarizations, especially in social media, mainly originate from algorithms. Can we say that they are the main culprits, and are we sure that public data spaces are the solution because there are no platforms and no algorithms? Maybe Sylvain, this is for you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to try to answer this in 1 minute because I guess we could talk about this subject for a very long time. There's a lot to say, but yeah, I think the problem, there are algorithms anywhere, like in this in this software that you're using. There are algorithms, and every time you have an app that shows data, the way this data is selected is made by algorithms. So the problem is not algorithm by himself. The problem is the fact that we are using social media where algorithms are closed. We don't know their secret. They're in the interest of people that we don't know, and so we don't know what these algorithms are and what they're made of. So I don't know if they're the main culprit. I guess they play a very big role in what people see and what people talk about. So yeah, that's definitely something that I think is very concerning. Are data spaces the solution? I guess the question is rather how we build the data space. What's for sure is that if we don't build data spaces, we stay on situations with a centralized platform, and so this centralized platform has control over who talks to whom in the space. So if we want to go out from this situation where there's one platform deciding on all the interactions, then we need to build a data space. And then how we build this data space, how we select algorithms on the data space, how we put transparency on how the data is selected and so on. That's a whole governance issue. And just putting a data space is not sufficient by itself.
Thank you a lot, Sylvain, for managing to answer such a complex question in under 2 minutes. That was impressive. Thank you. Thank you so much. So, unfortunately, we do have to close now the Q&A session and actually our meeting tonight, our first webinar. So I kindly ask Francesco Vecchi to take the stage for one last time in this webinar and provide a very brief wrap-up of this first event. From my side, I would like to deeply thank all the speakers of today's webinar. It was truly fascinating and inspiring. Thank you a lot again. Francesco, to you.
Thank you very much, Leonardo, and thank you sincerely, Marta and Sylvain. I do believe that you made the whole quality of the webinar. You've been amazing in providing participants that, in fact, we don't know how much they are knowledgeable about what is happening with their data, what is going on, what are the possibilities. Probably all of us are used to giving data to private companies without even knowing that we are giving data to them and how they're managed, and that there are other possibilities of managing our data. In my final remarks, I would just like to remind all of you that it was not mentioned during today, but we live in a context where data is literally the new economic capital. All services, most of our economies run on data, on our personal data, on our interaction, the data of our interactions on digital services. There are researchers speaking of the business of attention, and basically everything that is happening currently is based on our data. There was some time ago, we would discuss about the Internet of Things. So basically creating smart cities through gathering the constant gathering of data from the real world, and is also the direction of a lot of technological developments that are taking place currently. The reason why we need to reflect on this, I think it's obvious. Who is holding this data, who's managing this data, who's profiting from this data, and for what services and for what purposes is crucial. And this has been crucial for the Civic campaign since the very beginning. I think it was extremely I think that the campaign will highly benefit from all the use cases that have been shown during the webinar today, both the use cases from the data tank and from Sylvain. And just a very quick remark on what we're doing within the Civic campaign about data is our initiative for a European Democracy Data Commons, or European Data Space for Democracy. They're not necessarily the exact same thing as the presentation from the data tank and the presentation from Sylvain made it clear, but we do believe that we need a European public common data layer in order to improve the services of democratic governments on the one hand, and this mostly applies for the Democracy Data Commons, and in general to streamline civic participation online. And in that case, I'm referring to the data space on democracy. This is just one part of a way wider campaign, which is the Civic Artificial Intelligence campaign. I shared the link in the chat. You see here the QR code. You can have a look at our website. Just to be crystal clear, the landing page is under work, so you will see a more updated landing page with the new initiatives, but clearly working on data and a data layer for European democracy. This is paramount for the coming few months of the campaign. Therefore, invite all of you, if you want to have a look at the website, sign the campaign. You will be then added in our mailing list. We will reach out to you. In general, if you register to the webinar, you will receive a follow-up email by me with some interesting links in order to get more involved in the campaign. I would ask Marta, Anna, and Sylvain if you would like to share the presentations with us so I can share the material with those who register to the webinar. Not all of them managed to attend. In fact, just half of them managed to attend today, but I guess that this is going to be extremely helpful for all of the members of Eumans in general, and more specifically, everyone who showed interest in this event. And what can I say? As you saw, as I said at the beginning, Eumans is a pan-European movement by popular initiative. We need your help. We need your energy, your ideas, your thoughts, and your sensitivity towards these topics. Therefore, if you want to have an active role in the campaign and not just follow our initiatives, I would strongly recommend you fill in the engagement form and share it in the chat, and I will share it again in the follow-up email and become an active member of this campaign. With your efforts and with the effort and joining the efforts of the data tank or Startin Blox and of many other experts in the field that we will try to engage in our webinars in the coming few months, I'm sure that we will manage to catalyze the energies in the civic tech sector and create a new European public sphere. That said, I hope that I was motivating enough for all of you. I thank all participants and all the speakers once again for being part of this amazing webinar today. And I will say, see you next time in almost a month. You will receive updates on this. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everybody.
everyone.